Hey, it's me again. Today I had a thought. Why do prices never go down even though inflation slows down? Think about it. Inflation slows, but prices continue to increase. Today's video discusses just that. And the answers are quite interesting.
You've probably felt this. You're at the grocery store, you see the final bill, and you just think, hold on a second. I thought they said inflation was slowing down. Why doesn't it feel like it? It's a really common, really frustrating feeling. The headlines are saying one thing, but your wallet is telling a completely different story.
Well, that feeling, it's not just in your head. It really gets down to a common mix-up about what slowing inflation actually means for the prices we all pay every day. So let's break down the economic forces that explain why once prices go up, they almost never seem to come all the way back down.
All right, the first piece of this puzzle, and honestly it's the most important one, is getting the difference between the rate of inflation and the actual level of prices. They sound kind of similar, but they describe two totally different things. And this, right here, is the heart of the confusion. What we're usually experiencing is something called disinflation. The best way to think about it is like you're in a car that's been flooring it, and you've just eased your foot off the gas. You're still moving forward, you're just not accelerating as fast anymore. So prices are still going up, just at a slower pace. What we all wish we were seeing is deflation, where the car actually starts rolling backward and things get cheaper. But real deflation is pretty rare, and it usually means the economy's in trouble.
So, to put it really simply, when you hear the inflation rate dropped from, say, 5% to 4%, it doesn't mean prices went down. It just means they're now going up by 4% a year instead of 5%. The increase is smaller, but it is still an increase. That's disinflation. And it's the main reason your bills aren't getting any smaller.
Okay, so let's shift gears and look at it from the business side of things. If slowing inflation doesn't mean falling prices, what's stopping companies from lowering them anyway, once their own costs get back to normal? Well, the answer is a concept economists have a great name for: stickiness.
Price stickiness is basically just a formal term for something you've definitely noticed in your own life. It's way easier for a company to raise a price than it is to lower one. And this isn't an accident. It's a real economic phenomenon. Prices are super flexible on the way up, but they're rigid or sticky on the way down.
So one of the big reasons for this stickiness is something called menu costs. And no, it's not just about restaurants having to print new menus, though that's part of it. It's really a catch-all term for all the little hassles involved in changing a price. It's the cost of paying someone to re-tag everything on the shelves, updating the website, printing new catalogs, not to mention all the management meetings to even decide on new prices. For a lot of businesses, it's just not worth the trouble unless they absolutely have to.
And look, this isn't just a theory. The data backs this up big time. Economic studies that have looked at millions of individual price changes have confirmed it. Even when inflation is totally flat, businesses make small price increases way more often than they make small price decreases. There's just this built-in upward bias. This brings us to a really powerful idea called the ratchet effect. Just think of a ratchet wrench, right? It clicks forward easily in one direction, but it locks up if you try to go the other way. Prices work a lot like that. They click upwards pretty easily when costs go up, but they get stuck. They lock in place when costs go down. The reaction isn't symmetrical at all.
Okay, so individual prices are sticky. Got it. But there's an even bigger force at work here. See, during a big wave of inflation, the entire cost structure of the economy can get shoved upwards, creating a new, permanent baseline that's just really hard to get back down from.
And that brings us to the biggest, stickiest cost for almost any business you can think of: wages. I mean, think about it. Once you give an employee a raise, it's almost unthinkable to turn around and cut their pay. That strong resistance has a name: downward nominal wage rigidity. People, for very understandable reasons, do not like pay cuts. So higher labor costs tend to get locked into the system for good.
So you can see how this chain reaction works, right? First, inflation drives up the costs of raw materials, shipping, energy, all that stuff. Then, to keep their workers from leaving, businesses have to raise wages. And here's the key part. Even if the cost of materials and shipping goes back down, those higher wages usually stay put. And just like that, you have a brand new, higher cost of doing business that's pretty much permanent.
Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, but I've definitely seen the price of gas fall before. And you're absolutely right. This is where we have to draw a line between two different kinds of prices in our economy.
So on one side, you have these volatile, flexible prices. Think gasoline,
energy, raw materials. They're tied to global markets and they can swing up and down like crazy. But on the other side, you have what we call structural prices, and these are the big ones: rent, healthcare, insurance, college tuition. These are services that are super labor-intensive, which means their prices are built on top of that sticky wage floor we just talked about. They almost never go down. Okay, so let's pull all of this back to what it actually feels like for you. We've talked about the economic mechanics, but there's also the all-important relationship between the prices you're paying and the money you're actually earning.
This here shows the concept of wage lag. See, during a burst of inflation, prices can change really fast. Sometimes it feels like overnight. But wages, they move a lot slower. Most people get raises once a year, if they're lucky. And that creates this gap where the cost of living is pulling away from what you're actually getting paid.
And what that means is, even after inflation cools off, your salary probably hasn't caught all the way up to the new, higher price levels. Your actual purchasing power is compressed. And that is the very definition of that feeling that your money just doesn't go as far as it used to. Because, well, it doesn't. And there is one final fascinating layer to this whole thing. It's not just about the math and the economic charts, it's also about how our brains process all this information. The psychology of pricing plays a huge role in why we feel the squeeze so much.
Yeah, behavioral economics tells us a few things. First, our brains anchor to prices we remember. In our head, a gallon of milk is supposed to cost a certain amount, and this new price just feels fundamentally wrong. Second, we're wired for what's called loss aversion. Basically, the pain of a price going up feels way worse than the pleasure of a price going down. And finally, we're much more sensitive to price changes on stuff we buy all the time, like food and gas, which makes these new, higher prices feel absolutely inescapable.
So let's put all the pieces together. We've got slowing inflation, which is not the same as falling prices. We've got sticky business costs. We have a new, permanently higher floor for wages. And we have our own psychology working against us. So where does that leave us?
The final picture is really more of an upward staircase. Each major round of inflation pushes the whole economy up another step. And afterward, things just stabilize on that new, higher landing. The system just isn't built to go back down the stairs. It's built to pause for a while before the next climb. And that really is the calm and maybe a little frustrating reality of it. While the rate of inflation can and does slow down, which gives us some relief, the actual price levels that we all got used to have been reset. They've essentially become a part of economic history.
Now, what did you think about that? I told you it was interesting. So let me hear your thoughts, your comments. What do you think? Leave a comment below, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.